This is going to be the start of the assignments. I ran into some issues with the software install not quite lining up with what I expect you to be seeing, and I want to try to uh, reduce that any of that confusion that may come up. So I did a reinstall and kind of cleared everything out. So hopefully this will have all of um, the same settings, the same items that you created. If you created the templates, the first couple of these, I'm going to go without the part template. We're just going to do the standard part. And I want to emphasize the need for the templates. So typically we start with a box and a hole through it. So we're going to do this with dimensions, and then we're going to go back and do it with relations. So one of the recommendations that I get quite often in the evaluations for the course is that we just stick to one or two things to start. It's like there are 5 ways to do this. There are so many choices, and I don't want to overload you with um, all of those options to begin with. So first thing we need to do is get into a part. I'm going to go ahead and leave my pull down menus collapsed since this resolution on the screen is a little bit different. I'm also going to try some more of the zoom functions of the capture software. So if anything strange goes on, well, I'll just blame it on the capture software. All right, so we want to go into a new part, and the defaults are part, assembly, and drawing. In one of the introduction videos, we created an inch and a metric, which just set the units and the decimal places, and pretty much got us started. So the picking the part file, we can either double click or select it, single click, and hit OK. All right, that puts us into the work area. We see the command manager pop up. We have pretty much everything we need, but there's a few things that I'd like to check. So if I come down to the units, and first thing, that's my capture software is in the way, is I'm going to make sure that my unit, so this template has inches, 3 decimal places, and if we're going to do duplicate, I'm going to go ahead and make it 2 decimal places on the millimeters. So that one's pretty good. I do want to see the origin, and I previously had set the plain white to default, so apparently it kept that in the system, so that is good. Um, The other one would be on the videos, the light blue. If I'm still in the magenta, then I'm okay with it. So it doesn't seem like we've changed a lot of things here. I ran through some of the other items that the mark dimensions for drawing, things that we'll use later on, that are still in basically in the background at this point. All right, so first thing we need to do is tell the software where we want to sketch. So I want to be in the front plane. And to start off with, we can go to the front plane pretty regularly. It's not going to make that big of a difference. The top plane or the right plane. It just depends on the orientation. And as we get more into design intent, and we're seeing what we want this to do in an assembly, then we can make different decisions and have it import or insert into the assembly in an orientation that is a little more convenient. Does it matter if it's out of position? Not really. We can rotate it and move it and do all of the things we need to position it. But the mindset and extracting these parts out of our imagination and getting them into the assembly through the interface of the software is one one less step here or there makes the process a little more seamless. So as I hover over these, I'm going to see the front plane, the top plane, the right plane, and the origin. If I didn't turn on the view for the origin, then I would still see that little orange dot. So we need to tell this where we're going to sketch. If I don't do anything and go into sketch, the first thing it's going to ask is, where do you want to sketch? And I would just select the front plane. All right, my preference is because once we move past this first stage, I'm just going to be selecting planes and faces, and I'm not so concerned about coming up to the command manager all of the time to make those selections. But to start off with, if you go to sketch, then on the sketch tab and then starting a sketch, the one thing that I will warn is if you see something that says 3D sketch, we are not ready for 3D sketches yet, so avoid that. You will have something really different going on if you get into a 3D sketch. All right, so visual clues. We have tons of visual clues. And the first one here is that our origin went from blue to red. And with the red origin, in the status bar, we have unit locations. It is an underdefined sketch as its status. Our goal is to have a fully defined sketch, and we are editing sketch 1. That is our go-to view. All right. The short leg is horizontal, and the long leg is vertical. So if I hold down the middle mouse wheel and I spin this around to some other orientation to see a piece of geometry, I still have that perception of long leg vertical, short leg horizontal, and then I can go back to the control keys or the space bar, but if I do control 1, that's going to put me back into the front view. All right, so just some basic navigation that at some point you're going to click on something, it's going to do something weird, and you need to get back to the front plane. So we're going to look at the drawing, and the recommendation is you watch this video and the next video, because this video is going to be with dimensions, and we want to take advantage of relations. So we're going to start talking about relations early and often, and the dimensions are in effect a relation. They do not exist outside of that structure. The parametric definition is that the dimension drives the geometry does not drive the dimension, in most cases. All right, there are always exceptions. Okay, so we need a box, and the first box I'm just going to do with lines so we can talk about that sketching process, and then we'll generate the circle, and we're given a thickness of 1 inch. So the process is that we open up a sketch, we do our 2D geometry, and then we extrude it out. We make it into a solid. So one of the most important rules is that you want to be attached to the origin. There needs to be a relation or a dimension somehow tied to the origin. So I come up to the command manager and I look for my line command, and it tells me that I can hit L on the keyboard or just go into the line. The property manager changes automatically if there's something else I need to do, which not really here. And I want to illustrate the snap, so a little bit of a jump, and then the little yellow box pops up. Now, and this is one of those I'd really like to zoom in on, but I don't think I can hold this position in the software and do the zoom. So we're just going to go with, this is what I should do, is click on the origin, and then as I drag away, I'll start to see the line. If I click away or I miss the origin, and it does not go fully defined. All right, so what I'm seeing on the screen here is I am drawing the line. It is 3.268. I am not going to try to chase that 2/1000ths of an inch or even 10/1000ths of an inch. I don't care. It's going to get close, And if I brought it out to the 5.7 almost, and we're going to 5.5, that's fine. All right, the little yellow box tells me that that horizontal relation is going to be applied. All right, so when I let go, it is the selected item. Yours is probably in blue. On the property manager, I see that it's horizontal, and I'm just going to go ahead and check out of that and check out of that property manager so that I can drag the endpoint. So we have the grips or the handles or however you want to define those. We also have a relation shown. So this is one of the things that will turn off eventually when they get too annoying, like there's a lot of them. So at this point, I can left click, hold down, and drag, and I'm going to see those little inference lines popping up. The little dash blue lines are telling me that I am in line with vertically, and probably not going to see it on that side, so horizontally and vertically, and then I'm looking to do that little jump and get back to the yellow box that's telling me that I'm going to be coincident. The endpoint and the origin are now tied together. They have a relation, and I can see the coincidence and I can see the horizontal. So I'm going to shrink that up just a little bit, zoom in on it, and see if I can zoom in around those guys. All right, so coincident, horizontal, and what that comes back to, let's see if I escape out of the point. We can also see the icons over here on the property manager for horizontal, vertical, and then depending on what we select, what is in that box will determine what relations are available to add. All right, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about drawing the lines. So I did a click drag, and predominantly I click and drag. So if I'm just going around the box this way and I go to a click, all right, so click once, let go, click again, this is going to act continuous. All right, so it's going to keep drawing lines until I tell it to stop. All right, so I'm not very good at the double click to get it to stop, so I usually end up just hitting escape on the keyboard. All right, so yellow inference lines are showing me the horizontal and verticals related to what I drew last. If this was a circle, it might show me the tangencies, and when I snap to it, or it makes that little jump, then it goes to blue, and I will also get an inference line that tells me I am vertical. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and in the command by double clicking. Hey, it worked that time. So I want to go back into the line and go to a click and drag. So I'm going to hit L on the keyboard. I'm going to look for that. It's not really a coincidence. It actually is showing me the concentric icon. But once we make that relation to the endpoints, it's more of a merge, which just doesn't have a relation. It's one of those weird things that would expect, but it doesn't. All right, so as I'm dragging through, I can see it go coincident, vertical, and when I get to that point and let go, the region fills in, and we have the the geometry. All right, so if we go in and zoom up onto those guys, all right, so vertical, horizontal, and then let's see if it will come back and go to coincident. All right, so we're going to read those. Now, one of the reasons that I turn these off in the view is because no, I need the origin. I do not want the sketch relations. All right, so we turn these off probably in our template because anything that I select when it's highlighted it gives me the relations just for that item. It basically acts like a filter. All right, adding dimensions. This is where I'm not lazy, I'm just really efficient. All right, when we go into our smart dimension, it's going to try to figure out what we want. All right, so if I go to an object and I pick the object, that's going to give me the full dimension. I need to click again to place it, and then 5.5, enter, and that gives me the value. If it needs to make it bigger, make it smaller. It doesn't really look like it did anything because the first dimension acts as a scalar. It pulls the frame and doesn't really do anything to the ratio, height to width, all that kind of stuff. All right, so my preference would be to click on that, but by this example, I'm going to go from object to object because sometimes there's a gap in there, sometimes there's other geometry that might interfere with it, so we can pick between two objects. Again, I need to left click and place the dimension and then enter the value, and when I hit enter, it stretches. Notice that everything went to black, and on the bottom here, it's on the status bar, it's showing me fully defined. If I use the mouse scroll wheel, I can zoom up, go in, out, and then also on our heads-up display or the F, we can zoom to fit. All right, going to go ahead and put in the circle. And that was a click and drag. If I did a click, basically the same result, same thing. I don't have to check or exit out of the circle command. I can go right into the smart dimension and left click to select the object, left click again to place the dimension, and we have 1 inch for our diameter. All right, circles are always going to be diameters and arcs are always going to be radius. But we can interchange those a little bit, which we'll deal with later. All right, going back to the drawing one more time. 2.75, which we do the math, that's half, and 1.5, that's half of the vertical. All right, so one of the reasons that points are not my favorite is that if I go between a point and a point, I can get it, but there's also room for it to orbit. So let's go ahead and place it. And this is probably not going to be the best example. Yep, it tied it in. There are times where the points orbit, but as far as the biggest target to select, an object and an object, I think is still going to be easier than setting it up to with the points. So if you use the points, they're probably going to work in most cases, but if there's a problem, it's probably going to be because of the points. All right, so doing a little adjustment, and I know I clicked through that last one of the object place, enter the value, hit enter to set the dimension, and then we'll go over to features, and once we tell it to extrude, and again, I don't have to exit the sketch to tell it to extrude, but once I've created this feature, once I've created this extrude, then I will have to do things a little bit different. But for the first go around, we can enter the 1 inch. If I want to preview it, then I hit tab. Right, and that shows me that it is going in the Z positive direction. If I reverse it, it will send it the other way, and my single arrow will change direction as well. All right, so there's other things that we can do that we will get into, but we don't have that geometry set up just yet. So we're just going to accept the feature, and that gives me my solid. All right, so We will save that. We created a folder. Notice this went back to the templates. So try not to save anything in the templates. I need to navigate to my drive, and we're going to go to my models and assignment 1. And then this is P1-1, but I'm going to do another version of this. So, and I'm just going to give this the NA designator. All right, so, and I also want my initials tied to this, so that will help me with grading. But once we establish the naming convention, you can put them first, last, and there's not always going to be an A and a B. It's just picking up the figure and putting in the P1-1. All right, so once I save that, I can go ahead and hit OK, and then we can close the model. All right, so the next video will be using relations to center the circle. I'm going to close that, and we'll end here.